1164 species in genus Rhododendron. See full list at monsteraholic.com. Rhododendrons, a floral love affair. My name is Ferb Vu, and I have a confession. I'm utterly captivated by rhododendrons. These diverse and stunning shrubs, with their vibrant blooms and lush foliage, have completely stolen my heart. From the moment I first laid eyes on a hillside ablaze with their colorful blossoms, I was hooked. Rhododendrons, belonging to the genus Rhododendron, are a vast and varied group. In fact, it's one of the largest genera in the plant kingdom, boasting over 1,000 species. They belong to the Ericaceae family, which also includes other favorites like azaleas, blueberries, and cranberries. But for me, nothing quite compares to the majestic rhododendron. Do deer eat rhododendron? I remember when I first planted rhododendrons in my garden, I was worried about whether deer would be attracted to them. Unfortunately, I learned the hard way that they do indeed enjoy nibbling on rhododendron leaves. One morning, I woke up to find several of my plants partially eaten, and after some investigation, I discovered deer tracks nearby. It was quite disappointing, especially after all the effort I had put into nurturing those plants. Since then, I've had to take extra precautions to protect my rhododendrons from hungry deer, such as using deer repellents and fencing. How to propagate a rhododendron. Propagating rhododendrons is a process I've found both rewarding and fascinating. One method I've had success with is propagation by stem cuttings. I start by selecting healthy, non-flowering stems from the parent plant during the early morning when the plant is most hydrated. Then, I carefully cut a 4 to 6 inch section of the stem, making sure it includes a few leaf nodes. After removing any lower leaves, I dip the cut end in rooting hormone to encourage root growth. Next, I plant the cuttings in a well-draining soil mix, ensuring they're kept consistently moist but not waterlogged. I found that placing a plastic bag over the pot helps to maintain humidity and encourages root development. With patience and proper care, these cuttings eventually develop roots and can be transplanted into larger pots or directly into the garden. It's a rewarding process to watch these new plants thrive and grow. How long does rhododendron bloom? The blooming period of rhododendrons is one of the highlights of my gardening year. In my experience, the duration of their bloom can vary depending on factors like the rhododendron variety, climate, and local growing conditions. Generally, though, I've found that rhododendron blooms can last anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks. Some varieties may have a shorter bloom time, while others, especially those with multiple flower trusses, can extend their display for a longer period. It's always a breathtaking sight when my rhododendrons burst into bloom, and I try to savor every moment of their colorful display while it lasts. How fast do rhododendron grow? The growth rate of rhododendrons can vary depending on several factors, including the specific variety, environmental conditions, and care provided. In my experience, rhododendrons are generally considered to be moderate to slow-growing plants. When I first planted rhododendrons in my garden, I noticed that they took some time to establish themselves, especially during the first few years. However, once they became established and found their footing, their growth seemed to accelerate somewhat. On average, I've observed that rhododendrons can grow anywhere from 1 to 2 feet in height per year under optimal conditions. However, this growth rate may slow down as the plant matures. Regular watering, proper soil preparation, and occasional fertilization have helped me encourage healthy growth in my rhododendrons over time. Will rhododendron cuttings root in water? In my experience, rhododendron cuttings typically don't root well in water alone. Rhododendrons prefer a slightly acidic, well-draining soil mix for root development. When I've attempted to propagate rhododendrons from cuttings, I've found that using a rooting hormone and planting them directly in a soil mix yields better results. However, some gardeners have reported success with rooting rhododendron cuttings in water if they use specialized techniques such as mist propagation or aeroponics. Personally, I've found that soil propagation tends to be more reliable and results in healthier root systems for my rhododendron cuttings. Can rhododendron grow in shade? Rhododendrons are renowned for their ability to thrive in shady conditions, which is one of the reasons I love them for my garden. In my experience, they prefer dappled shade or partial shade, where they receive filtered sunlight or a few hours of direct sunlight each day. I've found that planting them under the canopy of taller trees or on the north side of buildings provides the ideal conditions for their growth. In these shady spots, rhododendrons tend to produce lush foliage and vibrant blooms, enhancing the beauty of my garden while also providing habitat for wildlife. However, it's important to ensure that they receive adequate moisture and good air circulation to prevent issues like root rot or fungal diseases. Overall, I've had great success growing rhododendrons in shaded areas of my garden, and they continue to thrive year after year. How to pronounce rhododendron? The pronunciation of rhododendron is typically rhododendron. The emphasis is usually placed on the second syllable, dn. It's a beautiful word for a beautiful plant. Is rhododendron poisonous to dogs? Yes, rhododendrons are indeed toxic to dogs. As a dog owner myself, I take great care to ensure that my furry friends stay away from these plants. Rhododendrons contain toxins called granotoxins, which can cause a range of symptoms in dogs if ingested, including vomiting, diarrhea, drooling, abdominal pain, weakness, tremors, and even more severe neurological effects in some cases. It's essential to keep an eye on pets when they're around rhododendrons and to prevent them from nibbling on any part of the plant. If I ever suspect that my dog has ingested any part of a rhododendron, I seek veterinary attention immediately to ensure their safety and well-being. Why are my rhododendron leaves turning yellow? When I noticed my rhododendron leaves turning yellow, it was quite concerning, but I learned a few common reasons that might be causing it. One possibility is that the plant is not getting enough water, which can stress it out and lead to yellowing leaves. Another factor could be improper soil pH or nutrient deficiencies, particularly iron or magnesium, which are essential for healthy leaf color. In my experience, excessive sunlight or intense heat can also cause rhododendron leaves to yellow, as they prefer partial shade and cooler temperatures. Additionally, diseases such as root rot or pests like lacebugs can contribute to leaf discoloration. I found that closely examining the plant and its growing conditions helped me identify and address the underlying issue, whether it's adjusting watering practices, improving soil conditions, or treating for pests or diseases. How deep are rhododendron roots? Rhododendron roots typically grow relatively shallow, extending outwards rather than deeply into the soil. In my experience, the root system of a rhododendron tends to be concentrated in the top 12 to 24 inches of soil, with some larger roots potentially reaching deeper depths. These shallow roots are well adapted for absorbing nutrients and moisture from the upper layers of soil, where organic matter and moisture are more abundant. When planting or caring for rhododendrons, I make sure to provide them with a well-draining soil mix and avoid disturbing their shallow root system to promote healthy growth and development. How to grow rhododendron from cuttings. Growing rhododendrons from cuttings can be a rewarding way to propagate new plants. Here's a step-by-step guide based on my experience. Select healthy cuttings. Choose healthy, non-flowering stems from the parent plant. Opt for semi-hardwood cuttings, typically taken in mid to late summer. Cuttings should be around 4 to 6 inches long and include several leaf nodes. Prepare cuttings. Trim the cutting just below a leaf node using sharp, clean pruners. Remove any lower leaves to expose a few nodes along the stem. Apply rooting hormone. Dip the cut end of each cutting into a rooting hormone powder or gel to promote root development. Be sure to follow the instructions on the rooting hormone packaging. Prepare planting medium. Use a well-draining rooting medium, such as a mix of perlite and peat moss, or a specialized rooting mix. Fill small pots or trays with the planting medium. Plant cuttings. Insert the cuttings into the planting medium, ensuring that at least one node is buried beneath the surface. Firm the medium gently around the cutting to provide stability. Provide ideal conditions. Place the pots or trays in a bright, indirect light location, avoiding direct sunlight. Maintain a consistently moist but not waterlogged environment by watering gently as needed. Encourage root growth. To help maintain humidity around the cuttings, you can cover them with a clear plastic bag or place them in a propagator. This helps create a mini greenhouse effect and promotes root growth. Monitor and care. Check the cuttings regularly for signs of growth and ensure the soil remains moist. Avoid overwatering, as excessive moisture can lead to rot. Transplanting. Once the cuttings have developed roots, typically several weeks to a few months, carefully transplant them into individual pots filled with a well-draining potting mix. Continue to provide appropriate care as they establish themselves. Harden off. Before planting the new rhododendron plants outdoors, Gradually acclimate them to outdoor conditions by exposing them to increasing amounts of sunlight and outdoor temperatures over a period of time. By following these steps and providing proper care, you can successfully grow rhododendrons from cuttings and enjoy the satisfaction of propagating new plants for your garden. How long do rhododendron bloom? The duration of rhododendron blooms can vary depending on factors such as the specific variety of rhododendron, environmental conditions, and climate. In my experience, rhododendrons typically bloom for a few weeks to several weeks, usually in late spring to early summer. Some varieties may have a shorter blooming period, while others may continue to produce flowers for a longer duration. I've found that optimal growing conditions, such as adequate sunlight, moisture, and proper soil pH, can help prolong the blooming period of rhododendrons. It's always a joy to witness the vibrant and colorful display of rhododendron blooms in my garden, and I make sure to appreciate their beauty while they last. How to fertilize rhododendron. Fertilizing rhododendrons is important for promoting healthy growth and vibrant blooms. Based on my experience, here's how I typically fertilize my rhododendrons. Choose the right fertilizer. Select a fertilizer specifically formulated for acid-loving plants like rhododendrons and azaleas. Look for a balanced, slow-release fertilizer designed for acid-loving plants, with a formulation such as October 10th, 10 or 12-6-6. Timing. Fertilize rhododendrons in the early spring, just as new growth begins. Avoid fertilizing later in the growing season, as this can stimulate new growth that may not have time to harden off before winter. Application. Apply the fertilizer evenly around the base of the plant, taking care not to allow it to come into direct contact with the stems or foliage. Use the recommended amount of fertilizer according to the instructions on the packaging. Watering. After applying the fertilizer, water the rhododendron thoroughly to help the nutrients penetrate the soil and reach the roots. Mulch. Consider applying a layer of organic mulch, such as pine bark or wood chips, around the base of the plant after fertilizing. Mulch helps conserve moisture, suppress weeds, and gradually release nutrients into the soil as it decomposes. Monitor. Keep an eye on the rhododendron for any signs of nutrient deficiencies, such as yellowing leaves or poor growth. If needed, you can apply a foliar spray of liquid fertilizer during the growing season to provide additional nutrients. Avoid over-fertilizing. Be cautious not to over-fertilize rhododendrons, as this can lead to salt buildup in the soil and cause root damage. Follow the recommended dosage and frequency of fertilization to avoid these issues. By following these steps and providing the appropriate type and timing of fertilizer, you can help ensure that your rhododendrons receive the nutrients they need to thrive and produce stunning blooms. What is eating my rhododendron leaves? If you notice something eating your rhododendron leaves, it's likely that you're dealing with a pest infestation. Several common pests can feed on rhododendron leaves, including rhododendron leafhopper. These tiny insects feed on the undersides of rhododendron leaves, causing stippling and discoloration. Azalea lacebug. Lacebugs are small, winged insects that suck sap from the undersides of rhododendron leaves, leaving behind yellow stippling and black excrement spots. Caterpillars. Various caterpillar species, such as the azalea caterpillar or the rhododendron borer, can feed on rhododendron leaves, causing visible damage. Deer. In areas where deer are present, they may browse on rhododendron leaves, especially during times of food scarcity. To identify the culprit, carefully inspect the affected leaves and look for signs of the pest itself or its feeding damage. Once you've identified the pest, you can take appropriate measures to control it. This may include using insecticidal soaps or horticultural oils for small infestations, applying insecticides labeled for rhododendrons, or using physical barriers or repellents to deter larger pests like deer. Regular monitoring and prompt action can help protect your rhododendrons from further damage. Should I cover my rhododendron for winter? Whether or not to cover your rhododendron for winter depends on various factors, including your local climate, the specific variety of rhododendron, and its age and health. In regions with harsh winters, covering young or newly planted rhododendrons can help protect them from freezing temperatures and drying winds. Here are some considerations. Cold hardiness. Some rhododendron varieties are more cold hardy than others. If you have a hardy variety and your area experiences mild winters, covering may not be necessary. Age and health. Young or newly planted rhododendrons are more vulnerable to winter damage, so providing extra protection during their first few winters can be beneficial. Additionally, rhododendrons that are already stressed or weakened may benefit from winter protection. Covering methods. If you decide to cover your rhododendron, use materials like burlap, frost cloth, or blankets to create a barrier against cold temperatures and drying winds. Avoid using plastic, as it can trap moisture and promote fungal diseases. Ventilation. Ensure that the covering allows for some airflow to prevent moisture buildup and reduce the risk of fungal issues. Timing. Cover your rhododendron before the first frost of winter and remove the covering once the danger of frost has passed in spring. Leaving the covering on too long can lead to moisture buildup and encourage fungal diseases. Before making a decision, consider consulting with local gardening experts or nurseries familiar with your area's climate to get personalized advice on winter care for your rhododendrons.